All right, let's start with the prayers. Mane jide dena choje zo deze kevo jola jo. Amba bo jodo suzo wa ishe yaso zeje longo. Amba jide sona lome wa bo chuni jola jo. Jo dembo time dawe jo sendo jawa jola jo. Tuje jena seba sona je nyame kyuni jola jo. Ombo tuje jene ma tamje jembe demo. Sona yene jazo je tejin shela jazo gabe deja tewa. Kewe nyezo le toje. Jido dana jegyo ba jegyo jela jo. Kone towe laya de laba dana rane. Shenje damba yede ne gedu laya ja. Eba jiya meja je jewa puzun zombar. Range sene yonzo de dene sange tembaye. Amara re mame da gyoma seba shugur. Melon lodan jinda bu tuje suna de darda. Suna de tamje sebai. Oba döne gege radöde. Gada nadan şive lapçuge. Sive sole doa doa. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like the golden mountain, fame that blazed in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only virtuous actions, and do your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. To these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death.
Aba bunjo sumba cha dige dagi toba de jena sonde de jo chago gumbo re la gno je gindu jumbo na janju sembe gindu jumbo na dama jidu jude de sonde de zamo na wa shi jabe chuje na dagi tinge de la nyobro shuzo ya de janju zamba zamba jembo baba jere de wanju jira je paru do jembo zama je Bonnie no number dashing bumbo, the Dalaya Raji, Doma Namata, Tene Sangi, two, Tenam, Demba, Sherry, Sanju, Samba, Samba, Amacheres, Wanjula, the Gage, Meso, Rijibu, Galana, Cheraki, Paru, Samonche, Bachaban, Deba, Dala Mata. Deme bada chanju semba semba jempo baba jene se wanju ki sedan demba sheri dige je mezo sheri bu rije buwa rije bu mo gama ma sheri paru do chemba sama cheba cheba deba tedar namba tawa chade bumbu ngabo de dava Sangi tombar nambar yanda bar Chiso tao su tomba o tomba nye su su sule tomba nye shema nye tomba nye me kyan su shema nye no de shen do sorwa dan de she dan de she dan nambar she pa dan tomba o shiri po se da che dan je tomba nye de se nye me pa ma che pa ma ka pa che ma me pa che ma ka che wa me pa ka wa me pa o shiri Tawena tomba nila sume sowa me dushi me nama sheba me me nawa me name cheme yune sume drame jeme rome reja me chume to bije kame bane ije kame ije nambre shebe kaje bado ya me do mariba seba me kashi sebe bado ya me do tejin do dume kunju wada goba dan lame Shime towa me mato paya medo sari gu de la wena janju zemburam towa me be shir shira di paru gu chimba la tenjing ne de simla chirwa me jing chawa me de chinje lo lo chindu yang le de be thara chindu du zundu namba shube zangye tamje jang shira di paru gu chimba la tenne lana meba yanda bar zobe janju do ngomba zoba san je zo de la wena shira di paru gu chimba Lana mebe nga miyamba da nyebe nga bunga tamche raku shivra chebe nga mizu bena dembar sheba jade sharabye paru do chebe nga meba te ata gade para sandar Ude zo Ribu chanju zemba zemba jembe nene sharabye paru zemba zamola la para chao tene chumden te tengen zindebe shende chanju zemba zemba jembo baba jene ze wanju sa lezo jejawa jene lezo riji bu dede sheno dede shinde chidera choje temba Shira je baru de jemba zamola je barjate de shin sheba namkya jesu yiramo chomden degi je ka sene sedan demba shari dade boda janju zemba zemba jembo baba jene se wanju da tamje da dembe korra beda da tada meda namayanda tesar jebe jine yirande chomden deje sumba longa
Page 11. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha on Vulture's Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom Gambhya, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, to the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke of the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, O Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formations, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eyes, no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. As there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond. And because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of victory and sight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family, and exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, men, anti-gods, and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
Chanju said, Chanju Delani, Sanji, Kusum Tu. Oh, Tilla Julia Delani, Lovetella, and then Tabashera Tabacha Chanju, Undo Chanjus and the Lovia, Shera Bicha, Tanda Chanjus and the Lovia, or that Della Junie and the Rangi Kosum, Lunga Yisumin, to you around Chebasunde. And Chanjus and the Chebale, Julian, San Chanju, one Tobachek. Oh, the dig and Joseph and Joseph with Chabas and not the lovely resource.
Now we resume the way of the Bodhisattva, the present text, the Bodhicharya Avatara. The way of the Bodhisattva, entering the way of the Bodhisattva, is entering the very mind of enlightenment. It is the conduct of the Buddhas, the conduct of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, and we enter this through the training in the conduct of the Bodhisattva. The conduct is of two aspects, the method aspect and the wisdom aspect. The method aspect is conventional bodhicitta. The wisdom aspect is ultimate bodhicitta. And these we engage in through body, speech, and mind. And we do this in our ordinary day-to-day behavior in order to achieve the ultimate ground of Buddhahood, and so we train in the way of the Bodhisattva.
Oh, the Gosumbo, and Chanju Semni, Changne, and Tebu Chanju, Bobana, Gurva. Oh, the dig Yamen chair and the fact that Chanju and the Jabal said, or the dish power.
Now, each of us in our ordinary body, speech, and mind have this, a body, our speech, and our mind. And our project is to exchange this, to swap out these three ordinary body, speech, and mind, and replace them with the very three bodies of the Buddha. And we do this through the training in the mind of enlightenment so that body, speech, and mind may conform with the mind of enlightenment. These are called the three doors, the door of body, speech, and mind, these three. And we train in the mind of enlightenment to ultimately achieve the Buddha ground. And this is the training in the way of the Bodhisattva.
They do that, some other Subudi, Suji Pumbo Pam or Julian Sanji Kulajur. Sanji Kulajur. And another Tanda you joke, 아니 다들 말아 뭐도 바까는 이제 막 타모도 원도 전에 아니 산지 송을 주고 그랬어. 아니 투 대당 안 한다는 때 센서 이디 요즘 산지 투를 뭘 요래서
And so our physical form, our body, as it is transformed and another essence manifested, that essence which manifests is the very body of the Buddha. And our speech, our ordinary speech in its roughest, grossest form is transformed too into the speech of the Buddha. And our mind, our mentality, our intellect is transformed into the mind of the Buddha.
Oh yeah. 근데 인도 안에 말하는다. 지단 도나는 도그나는 가르쳐서 말하는 그게 총도 잡아. 다니 다기 고양이 손 다니 다기 고양이 다니 다기 자양이 레다 녀버 제바다 녀버 제발레 아니 다니 다기 방법이었어. 다니 다기 방법이었어. 말하는 수수비 다간다 수수비 개인이 수수로 열어와 근데 여봐 이제 다니 대월 되기요나 아니 다니게 고행잡대야 라는 지도를 했어 아니 다니를 메테오 용약이 동해 용약에 따라 아니를 내버 신예대 수시였으나 랑 수수도 돈에 우열했어 다니 다기 자야인스 오 대대기 다니 대대기 아니 지금 랑기 고승기 누가에서 저방 네 제다 만들고 돈은 아니 동해 위와 고승기 저바데 제다 야고 예배차네 아니 제부 대화용아 여바 대대기 제부 남샤데 여바데 아니 랑기 셰바체네 수수 방보체네 아니 수수 안달 수수 대화 루와다 동해 세와 체디 랑이 치고를 마도 신기 랑기 동해 매바 체다 아니 즉 대화용아 제가 답시 때 용아요 말해서 어디 더 나송 열어서
In the sutras is found this apothegm, this pithy knowledge that each is their own protector, each is their own enemy, and from our own faults, or rather our own faults, we are witness to. And so there is no other witness to our faults than ourselves, and there is no other who carries the responsibility for our faults apart from ourselves. And so too, there is no ultimate guardian of ourselves apart from ourselves. We hurt ourselves, harm ourselves, and we also protect ourselves and guard ourselves. And so, as this is the message found in the sutras, we recognize that body, speech, and mind, when they conform with what is right, leads to satisfaction. When actions of body, speech, and mind do not and are destructive, and as a result, only dissatisfaction and suffering results. So then one realizes this, comprehends this, and strives to dispel suffering and to bring about conditions for satisfaction. And each of us alone is responsible and able to do this, and this is the message of the sutras.
rāngla dewa rō chōng, rāngla jīg mē dewa mē dū, āni bē ngā dewa yī, ngā jīg chō yu, ngā chē yu sāng sūsū, dewa dā chōng dū sūsū gu chō yu bā, tīg yu bā chāwa dā. Jīg mā dewa dā dū ngā, kā ngā jīg lē dū tāmbā, āni jīg chīrō dā dā yōngā dā, jīg rāng dō chōwa dā shūk chīmbu yor wās. Chē tāng dē dē yu dū, tā rāngi dewa chōngā yī nā yā, rāngi chōngā nā shī, rāngla mā dewa chōngā dā yā, rāngi gī. 아니 지금 유무대 원게 요구요바다 라니기 지담마도 오늘 요구요바대야 아니 딱 수주고 삼로시 티스 땅 남자 하고 해서
Ordinarily during the periods of the day, as something good occurs for us, something positive, we take credit for it. And when something negative, something unpleasant occurs, we look outside of ourselves for some cause. And this tendency in us is very strong. However, we must recognize that in the way that we take responsibility for our good fortune, so too we must recognize that dissatisfaction we ourselves cause for ourselves. It is mental afflictions that cause them for us, and it is a mistaken way of going about things that causes it for us. And so if we can recognize this and make the necessary adjustment, we will benefit.
Oh yeah, today you do that. Kandar dunge singe dia, kandar dunge sik rangla luji thone tik ne naza on the same thola chikange do chikda do khari yuba ina yang ko le da jude ge namsha ge thone keje ji sheondu ani rangi chidam madikwa ani rangi bage gosum chobati mo chidam madikwa ina da pu ge chidam madikwa ina keng chidam madikwa so de share yorasena 오만 아주 레사 사족이 내게 되고 단다 영화 여봐다 아니 단다라는 나도 제가 디랑라야 아니 레사는 레디를 되고 미야데 망고 요르스 제가 디디 가다랑이 셈 고순 줘봐디 줘봐 쉬워지 좋나 아니 동해 용거야 요 말스 다 고순 줘배게 감사데 고 마디버 마이버지 차운데 아니 동해 용야 돼 되게 요구이리 아니 한달 동네 치 라나 동네 용야 돼야 랑이 수여바래 라나 찍 버겠네 봐 용야 돼야 랑이 수여바 이바디 아니 두 삼다나 아니 고대고 요래 손으로
Now, when we face hardship, physical pain, illness, mental hardship, mental pain, it is worthwhile to observe that these are the ripening of karmic causality. It is the result of our speech, the action of speech, being improper, and the body being improper, mental thoughts being destructive. And they may be improper or destructive in a temporary way or in a more lasting way. They may be, when we face a difficulty, when we face hardship, this may be the ripening of karma accumulated in the past, before this lifetime. Similarly, there may be hardship that we encounter that is the result of actions that we engaged in this very lifetime. So recognizing this, we may too recognize that if we conform body, speech, and mind to that which is constructive, then there will be no suffering. It won't be necessary for us to face the same hardship and suffering that we ordinarily do. And so we may too recognize that when facing hardship, pain, mental pain, and physical pain, we may recognize that this is what we have done to ourselves. This is harm we've done to ourselves and are doing to ourselves. And when we recognize this, a comprehension of karmic causality will dawn in us.
근데 이게 말한도 주유기 담보 싸워디 셈비드로 셈비디 아니 마리베 온도송 아니 마리베 되게 온게 아니 대사지 니모제 대사지디 아니 드라나 차베 온게 니모제 거야다 다 되게 갈래갈래지나니 고 바게 프로 온도 줘네 아니 공부기야 오 된데기 온게 다 나라 아니 다 지금 류마데다 셈마지고 용야겠다 유도디 아니 다랑이 셈데다 유무숨도 저거잖아 유무숨되게 슈gem을 랑 셈마지고 용하다 류마데고 용하디 오 코드숨도 소고요 데이디 아니 7월 네 치기 내봐도 되게 성공다 개사요 말에 근데 랑이 유무 두숨 되게 왕기 아니 랑을 두네 용하디 서 깨도 되네 지기 여러 세나 데이디 아니 한달 라운드 네버 제바데 랑이 지다 만들었던 연구요가 도스 누구여래 손하지
the very root of the evolution of suffering for each of us begins with the mind, and ignorance in the mind. That ignorance causes desire to arise, and that desire is transformed too into a hostility. And these ignorance, desire, and hostility move the mind and body to an experience of dissatisfaction and discontent. And so when the mind becomes excessively familiar with only the mental afflictions, these are only the cause of hardship and dissatisfaction. And so this is the experience that we have. The three poisons, condition this sort of experience for us. They are the main cause of suffering and dissatisfaction for us. And in this way, mental afflictions are each of us bringing harm to ourselves. Recognizing this is very important.
Oh yes, that is true. 도저선 선batsu rangi sendi rigbayishi rigbayishi nyamdo tam rigbayishi jesulop rigbayishi jebal을 내니 남내는 가르치 그랬으나 아니 거기 거기 되자게 쳐들라 인지기 주고 되자다 인지니부디 뒤유 때에서 망제 냠도도 용되고 그래서 대사도만도 찍바로요 다들 쌤들 때에서 만지고 온 되자기도 뒤나시 그 rigbayishi 제수 장이나 아니 되자게 쳐들라 인지기로 인지기에 거기 슈들라 아니 거기 콘도게 잡들라 수중어들라 잡아게 오르스 그래서 rigbayishi 때는 아니 시행을 제가 인지다랑 제가 인지들이 군들라는 아니 잡아들게 오르스 제가 뒤 아니 고승부 줘봤다가 개월 둬야 돼 아니 제가 수술하는 쌤들이 간다를 거기 rigbayishi다 아니 인지다 잡아게 냠도 들어와이나 아니 쌤들이 개회처럼도 그래 쌤들이 말이 받아 아니 되자도 콘도 왕도 따와이나 아니 내가 내 집어가 디고에 차기를 되고 동해용 어두스러 와서
Rather than allowing the mental afflictions to have undue influence, instead to train the mind so that there is the wisdom of reason that can inform one's actions. When the wisdom of reason begins to inform one's actions, desire, what would otherwise be mere desire, desirous attachment, may become the basis for compassion. The wisdom of reason may steer the mind in this direction towards compassion, where it would otherwise be desirous. And for the same reason, that compassion, when looking towards others, where there would be anger, instead there will be love. So rather than hostility towards others, by the force of compassion, one feels love for others. And so through these, compassion, bringing in its train love too, body, speech, and mind may begin to tend towards virtue rather than non-virtue. And this is a result of the wisdom of reason. The wisdom of reason or reasoning may lead the mind away from the three poisons. And when this occurs, then all actions of body, speech, and mind tend toward virtue.
어두지 세상다 뒤인도 만족이다 고승 비춰봐 쌤비 그래서 쌤들 아니 쌤비 제수라 나다 류니 연구로 세상 고승 비춰봐 뒤 랍니체 랍사디 장주 쌤니 랍유체 랍니다 제부 거르터 그랬으나 제부 고승도 더 그러다 와 뒤세상다 뒤를 랍야들라 자주 선주스 비춰봐 랍스 다투스 랍탄데 도그레스.
Now it is in this way that the mind, the inclination of the mind informs the action of speech and body. And so as the mind grows familiar with the mind of enlightenment, then body, speech, and mind can gradually take the form of the three Buddha bodies. And so the training in the way of the Bodhisattva is part of this very process. And so we turn our attention to the way of the Bodhisattva.
Oh yes, 세상다 말아도 고승기다 니무 뒤 님보다 쌤도 니무 온도 땅샤와이나 아니 니무 뒤 왕게 차소 차바다 안에 재단이 깨고 재단이 깨봐이나 아니 랑게 쌤나가 아니 쌤디기 왕게 아니 루가 이숨이 접어 숨디 아니 배다 루지 거네이나 아니 시행라 내버쳐서 소 접어다 매장어 접어다 마지막 내버도 주고 딜러 쏘고다 대단히 녀하게 아니 고승구 접어다 제기로 왔어 아니 대나시 쌤도 콘도 온도 송하다 나제다 되고 온도 송대이나 아니 시행라 직주마 그래 나 주인다 참마다 책주다 나게 가지고 디버사 나가시오 되게 버려 가지고 디버 되게 쌓인 걸 아니 디나시 셈미게 온도 여바이나 아니 몽바티 왕기 아니 그 거기 로다게야다 아니 지금 나선다 내선 로다 어디 이지고네 어 디버사 고도도 간가 아니 셈니모 온도 여바 언제 아니 내 미게 어떻게 되게 지역을 했어 되게 전에 아니 대부 동에 연구를 해서
Now, body, speech, and mind, as they are influenced by the mental afflictions, when they are under the undue influence of the mental afflictions, desire arises, hostility arises, fear arises. And when these are present in the mind, then physically one is likely to, inclined to harm others, take life, steal from others, engage in sexual misconduct, things of this sort. And so too, when the mind is angry, one is inclined to speak harshly to others, slander others, engage in the 4 non-virtuous actions of speech. And when the mind is under the influence of the mental afflictions, wrong view, malice, maliciousness, and covetousness are at hand for the mind. And so when these are all present, then the result will only be suffering.
쌤디 아니 잠바다 닝지기 왕도 땅을 외시고 땅 샤바이나 아니 되게 내기 고디기디 아니 셴나 거기 소치바도 파 매를 빵그레 아니 주인다 아니 지금 매자마 쳐발아 저거 봐 빵베고 아니 되게 도바디게 숭구로 왔어 도바디게 숭구 아니 랑이 줄라다 동해 용하기 동해 주코나 매바 이디 동해 용사 여가 티나시 아지 거는 사비 시디 마 내들 마주고지 디포 빵샤와이나 나지 거는 디고 사그마르 아니 이지 거는 사베 리바이시 건도 소와이나 그 내심 지금마르 나스미 여마르 로다 지금마르 마지와이나 아니 가서 고숨 비쳐봐 탐지 계획 초를 치마르 계획 초를 치바이자 아니 라는 디부 대화 용거로 왔어 어제다 디토네 아니 디부 대화도 동에 영야디 랑게 고숨 비쳐베게 남샤가 되면 용구고 여바디 어디를 좀 상담을 해서
When the wisdom of reason informs one's actions, informs the inclination one has, where one might be inclined to harm another, take the life of another, engage in sexual misconduct, and the rest, one will instead restrain oneself from those very activities. And so when this is done, then the cause for suffering, the later cause for suffering, is prevented. The cause is absent, so the resulting suffering will not arise. And when one has informed oneself through the wisdom of reason, and so restrains oneself from the negativities of speech, abandoning the negativities of speech, one will not see the results of those non-virtues. And similarly, when the mind is not under the influence of the mental afflictions and is not malicious, does not engage in wrong view, is not covetous, then one will not see the negative results of those non-virtues. And so in this way, through the wisdom of reason, one may come to inform oneself of the constructiveness of virtuous activities of body, speech, and mind. For those virtuous activities of body, speech, and mind lead to satisfaction, whereas destructive actions of body, speech, and mind lead only to suffering. And so one may become aware of this and take responsibility for one's actions.
오예, 근데 이들 톱자 장주 이 톱제게 단 무시 냠내디 아니 장주 쌤 고마다 쌤바 장주 쌤이 여기가 고바들에 어 데데 장주 쌤이 부디 줄라 깨버 쳐발라 좋아 아니 손놈 싸바데 개천보 이들 아니 전주 로 당보 가서 로 당보다 니바 숨바 숨지 가서 아니 장주 쌤 깨야게 소사야게 and my give a check you so side so think your response.
And the result of constructive actions of body, speech, and mind ultimately is the achievement of the Buddha ground, the achievement of Buddhahood. And one engages in these practices that result in Buddhahood through engaging with the two minds of enlightenment, the 2 forms of bodhicitta. And in order to embrace these 2 forms of bodhicitta, one must accumulate merit. Merit is required for the arising of the mind of enlightenment. And the first 3 chapters, chapters 1, 2, and 3 of the Way of the Bodhisattva, are concerned with practices for the accumulation of merit so that the mind of enlightenment may arise in us where it hasn't yet arisen.
요 당보가들라 말한도 장주 쌤이 표현시고 장주 쌤 생에디 아니 그 병역 가리열에 전주성 가르치는 기업으로 가르치는 장고로 병역 되기 시에 요 당부터 들어서 다 루이니바 가들라 다 전주성 기계에 전주성 장애게 수입이 있나야 니기 전주성 줄에 깨버 세벌 유 타보고 상이 유 장만 니모기 견다 맞죠 니모 장모고 왜 이제 되게랑이 싸게 니모 되기도 봐 타와 니모도 니모 샤도 가자도 답에 시돌라 아니 디바샤 봤는데 누디 나다 맞아 셰데 누디 디바샤도 누세데 장주고 셈 깨라 랑이 규 타바스고 요 타바 체발라 랑이 규 니모디게 타바치고 디 타바체 치돌라 아니 다 버게 소사 소놈사에다 쳐바피야다 가리 해봐 있는 되게 차가 아니 누이 집에나 숨고야 레송하지
The first chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva describes the benefits of the mind of enlightenment. What is the mind of enlightenment? Why should one strive in the mind of enlightenment? What are the benefits one may expect from the mind of enlightenment? We have concluded this chapter and moved on to the second chapter. The second chapter begins the training in the way of the Bodhisattva to purify the mind so that the mind of enlightenment may actually arise there. Purify the mind so that the mental afflictions no longer influence the mind. Purify the mind of all the negativities that it is responsible for. Extirpate these, purify these. And so we train in confession. We practice confession in order to purify the mind, remove the mental afflictions. And this is part of the process of, or rather, in order to succeed in the practice of confession, succeed in removing the mental obscurations and afflictions, we engage in the practice of accumulating merit. Involved in this is making offerings and other practices.
오예 진짜 다 장주쌤들이 줄라 깨버 채발라는 개념 파세야다 튀jem 두야 오다 디치돌라 아니 맞아 다 장주쌤 그게 다다 다 개념세야 튀jem 두야 탑 약수 아니 저 양라 뉘스 오 양라 뉘디 아니 셰부여레 스타 소사 소놈사 부여레 소놈사게 탑 쳐도 주바디 아니 양라 뉘지 거네 아니 소놈사야 되다 탑난 쳐도 주바자 디난 제리리 당고 루이니베 골라 아니 당고 양라 뉘지 시그레 양라 뉘고 나네 다 베제 심발이 임바이난 차서 양라도 뭐 요레 다 주주나는 최배 양라도 뭐 요레 이내 되게 가르면은 셴나야 눈들 말에 겨워 말해 손지
For the arising of the mind of enlightenment, there must be the supportive conditions, and all conditions that do not support its arising must be eliminated. And so to this end, one engages in the Anuttara Yoga, the supreme method for accumulating merit, which is the 7-branch offering. The 7-branch offering is the supreme form of merit accumulation. And so chapter 2 begins with the presentation of the 7-branch offering. Now, in other texts, sometimes the 7-branch offering begins with prostration. Here, however, we begin with offering, but there's no inconsistency here. It isn't contradictory or inconsistent in this way. And here we find the materials made during the offering described as materials that are personal possessions and those which are not, which are commonly had, and also offerings of one's own body and offerings that are unsurpassable. What is to be offered, how it is to be offered, and the purpose of the offerings are all shown.
and that and the Cheba Pudando, the country, Tango Cheba Dabuma Soviet Cheba. Any that country's pure, Cheba Pudan country's pure said that I would subject Digan on the Tanda let the response.
Offerings which may be offerings of that which is had in common, or offerings that are personal possessions. These are both meant to please and delight the sacred, the three jewels. Now, we have begun the description of these, and we resume that now.
Oh yeah, that that's about country's pure is that's what did it, that's about prayer. Say that the country's pure is. Or that the case the dig on the lady or is seven touch about country's pure is. And it's about prayer tea. Any that Choba put on the country's pure investment, Choba Pudu. And it's all the bed Chobati conduct Namran Chani, you Maiba, Petang. Chang Tama Petang Yamato at all. And I'm all China pet Chinju Maiba Chimbo pet, Zambuli, no diligent short that there's some done. The other Tatic Pogachova Pia to Zero, the guys say never. And the Gachawa, Yama, pet, Kada Chubagi, all go to it. Is it going to Putu was the Pia di or the Putu we are responsible.
Now, how is one to make an offering? When we're asked, how will you make the offering? How are you going to do it? One may do it. One may make an offering so that something that is finite becomes vast and immeasurable, bigger than the universe, immeasurably vast. And to be able to make an offering in this way is what we're after.
That Cheba Pia did that Tangamon was kept. And it's about Pidu Bay, Jachimbo Pure, Mango Pure, Islam, the data that's how was. Down the day, countries Pure event, Chuba Pia said the call years, Chuba Pia said the call you, Chuba countries Pure events, and that they miss a kit on a Kaya Marta, Richoresna, Kazan also counted the Shijawa Nasi, and thing is in the Z, the Chajak, Chingilam, thing is in Mebeg Ton and Pures. Or maybe to the purest, or digital and change out in a cousin. To out the door. Loy Lana, this was Loy Lana, two but Choji J, said that Jeba level, said that Jeba number leg will not. And you then about 2 channel dollar do it to the as well. Dollar seven dagi dishes or the tick dish would dig and that Choba put down your response.
Now, when the offering to be made is immeasurable in this way, then it might be asked, how do we come by materials sufficient for such a vast offering? What exactly would it entail? And the answer is, it is an offering made through the power of samadhi, the visualization by the force of samadhi, and through mantra and mudra. And so the root verse on page 38, verse 6 begins, I hold them all before my mind, and to the mighty sage, the greatest of our kind, and to his heirs I make a perfect offering. Sublime recipients, compassionate lords, oh, think of me with love, accept these gifts of mine.
Oh, this one. That's a dig for 6 dig that Kaduma Lavanata. And it's about pure data, and 2 conditions going to pure rest, the condition going to pure rest, that to direct that dealer and the condition was not. And then loyal langness, that's simply from Mubachin, that another around Manzo Tame Bajila Chasha, and Anita, Chobachachu Pugona, and the condition pure rest. Thing is, you thing is in the charge now to be the Pituguro, that another Tame Bachigi, and it's on Jachimbo side, Choba, and the condition pure, Zema, Tabuma, so and Zeti, the condition pure as na. Loy Langness, simply maybe thing, and the Jachimbo you were pure, they take some time pure, yes.
Now, the essence of this verse is, to put it in a roundabout way, the question posed to us here is, how do we make such a vast offering? An offering that is so inestimable as the one described, how would we ever make it? And the answer is, the way it is made is mentally, through mental visualization. Now, we'll take for granted that we are ordinary meditators. And so in this sense, a vast offering for us must be made through a mental visualization. It is different from the sort of offering that will be made by those who have achieved samadhi and can employ mudra and mantra. Now, we as ordinary individuals aspiring to accumulate the merit sufficient to develop the mind of enlightenment engage in this offering of commonly had materials, and we do it through mental visualization.
Oh, 세상 배제디 당보 가서 연주 좀 준주 연주 좀 아무도 뒤에 보고 시주가 되냐 바로 보고 시주가 되냐 아니 뒤에 때게 라도 좀 세상 아무도 뒤 수수 삼번나 소하는데 아니 쳐봐 막고 쉬우지 대신 잡아는 배 자친구 표고를 막고 표고랬어 아니 제일 수수미 좀 대야만 라고를 요말 필요 좀 삼번나 소화 가르쳐서는 캔자데 미 지팅주고 보시오 지 미베 삼로담이다 땅에 팅주고 보지 아니 지 거기 내가 지교저로 어디로 정도 소화리도 세상 뒤 아주 다다 삼담서마다 강라야 처법이야 막고지 장가잡 아니 왜 자친구 표고를 마 표고를 오늘 표고를 아니 로이 랑네 스페셈이던 표고를 되다 뭐 호비깔로 로를 상도 아니 직깔에 가고를 로스노.
Now, as we listen to this sort of presentation of the proper way to make an offering, or an offering that is vast, and when a vast offering is made, that it is to be made through mental visualization, one may listen to this and wonder, now here is an offering that is inestimable, well beyond the bounds of comprehension, and we're imagining that one creates such an offering mentally, visually, visualizes it, and then offers it. And this might well seem to somebody to be the practice of a most imaginative and sort of flamboyant personality. So it may be difficult to comprehend.
Oh, yeah, that's in the inner that competitive and it's Nizudo Sarchi, Yedu Zamba, and Tandangana, Tabu Sume Zepu, Le, Dabu Masume Zepuati, and in Yuba Chewa Yoga, Sonam Chewa Sagi Yuba. Oh, the day that Donna Yore, and another Chowatan to Zambay, and Mibamang, Chajik Semi, the Rebachin Puga, Mado, Mos Puake, Yomar, said that Medu. 아니 다고 마수메 제디 아니 랑르 랑네 셈기 메바진 피바티 아니 버게다 세마다 아니 직 섬르고 토네 뉴버체가 손은 체사 이거 어디에 예배냐 그래서
But upon reflection, and if one were to read the scriptures and consider the scriptures and listen to such a teaching again, what one will find is that, in fact, practically speaking, offerings made in this way have an extraordinarily unique potential for accumulating merit. And as this is the case, this form of offering is described in many places in the scriptures, and furthermore, in ritual practice, it is found often, most often, when making offerings, they are of this form, of things had in common, of the common, and mentally visualized. And this is because this is a particularly practical way to accumulate considerable merit.
Oh, yeah, that's the careers, no? And so Dadu Sunweg, Susu Yube, Zej, Pua Yina. And the pen peso chashan method Puyoina, and the method Puduzamba, and Suzuki method Tambo porque 탑시지도 배는 총안으로 요구 요바도 있나다 탑시지 요에나 아니 가게를 또는 당보면 또 유튜브 뭐도 공도 찍지 아니 또 아직 밀라직 셰셰로 찍당 거를 아니 디네 초용 초바 표설 내나야 직 수수 등에 디마리 또 찍강이 지어래 아니 분위기 얘기 고치를 내외나야 저거 표설도 전반에 수수 내 피에서 아직 제의 제의 삼네 간달 피에 쳐봐 표기할 때 이내 예 피라고 간달 그게 쳐봐들어야 아니 다 차소 이목이 쳐봐도 쌍만 많이 봐 대대기 왕기 아니 콜라디 쳐봐 표기의 편요도 충분하여서 디 잡들아 단달 다보 마소에 제디 아니 수수로 땡 뭐봐야 오치는 피투와 이나 아니 랑기 줄라 세나다 아니 차소 이모도 저기 되게 매워 있는데 아니 뭐에 전에 누바치아 이거든데 레송
Now, if one were to compare making offerings of the common substances to offerings of personal possessions, take for instance, personally offering a flower that one has. All that is involved in this, beginning with going to a store and buying the flower, haggling over the price, and then finding a place to make the offering and finding that which is required for that particular offering, and then when bringing all of that together and successfully making this offering, congratulating oneself, saying, "I've made this offering, I've made an offering," becomes an offering that is tainted with the mental afflictions, and insofar as it is of less benefit. But offerings of that which is the common good, commonly shared, because it does not invite acquisitiveness and the rest of the mental afflictions, is more constructive and more beneficial.
그게 최고의 표현이 손놈들을 도야시라 하고 열었어. 정의 표현 상 아니 그게 표사도 잠바 아니 수수기야 젤오 거기다 대도 미드서 젤이야 그 뇌표현이 돼 미드 따야도 아니 지금 표사는 뇌표현 상을 배 수술을 생각 예도 전부들 링도 왔어. 어쨌든 거기 대대 예도 잠바 아니 그 처바 표현도 처바 표현 공을 돼 아니 생각하는 사람을 맡아오면 처바 오늘 피투요 말했어. 다 틀리 다보 마소에 제비 거 선배나는 상마산지 피투고 이디 아니 어디에 저는 손을 열때 여거든 수수고 냠는 따다 수수고 제지 피 아니 선배나는 제지 피 아니 라고는 제지 피 아니 예바 되면 됐다나 아니 수수고 세번나 초알 레고 해서
Now, one will be able to judge the difference through their own experience. Remember what it entails to make an offering of something valuable. Imagine making an offering of a precious item, something that is very objectively very valuable. You'll go to make the offering, and you'll be involved in giving the offering, making the offering. And all the while, as you do it, and as you complete your offering, you'll be filled with thoughts of yourself. I am making this offering of something of such great value, and now I've made this offering. And just a short time after, you'll return to see whether it's still there or not, whether it's recognized. Is it still there? Have others noticed? And you'll be filled with pride and with arrogance that you're responsible for this valuable offering. And when this is the experience of the offering, then though it is a form of offering in name, in actuality, because you haven't been able to separate yourself from it, it isn't really in spirit an offering, and it isn't really in spirit meritorious. But compare this to making an offering of that which is had in common by all of us, and that which is given through mental visualization. Just compare yourself. You may make this judgment yourself, comparing what the experience is to give something
with your hand, using your own hands, giving some material offering versus making an offering with your mind, and see what the difference is in terms of the feeling that it gives you.
이게 말해서 수수 표해야 돼. 표현 표현은 쌤 싸움에서 표현은 수수로 손으로 그래서 대직체 단 이바들 아니 도구나 가르송어서나 배나 아주 세지 꾸지 상황이 나서 세지 꾸지 상황이나 아니 아주 표현 좀 보시고 여러 와서 어디 꾸지 상황 나지 막을 세지 꾸원도 맞아 쌤이나 꾸디기 저거 담고 꾸디기 배 쇼리다 되네 꾸다 되네 되냐 저는 산지에 되게 또 쌤나는 뭐뭐 있나 군이 아니 쌤나는 땡이지 고버디 아니 배를 채워요 송요래서 그래서 어디지
A mental offering is an offering that through which one actually parts with that which is given. When material offerings are made, one is less able to part with, to sacrifice, to truly give the material, the offering, the object that is offered. And the responsibility that one takes when making an offering is to part with something, to sacrifice something, to practice generosity and to actually give something. This is the responsibility when making an offering, and when this is achieved, then it is part of the accumulation of merit. And so we find in the sutras that there is this lesson presented to us that if one were to build, it is said in the sutras, if one were to erect a golden statue of a Buddha, as beneficial and meritorious as this activity would be, compared to merely mentally visualizing a throne and then the body and then the good qualities, the great qualities of the body of the Buddha through the force of samadhi, this is of even greater merit. This is found in the sutras.
아니 고랑의 코도 주변 자주성보다 전보다 자양로 소반 자주성만 먹고요. 진짜 전체가 필사기다 유지체. 다 저바 간에서 표고스나 렉비드나 랑이 고슴 고백권. 표기스 대바다 너바다 고백권 표기스 어디서 뭐라서.
So with that, how an offering is to be made, we find in this lesson. And so the object to whom, the personages to whom we make offerings are the Buddhas, and the Buddhas are surrounded by their retinues, the Bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri and the other heirs to the Buddha. These are the objects of our offering, and the expression that we take as we make these offerings is one of deep faith and veneration for those personages.
나 처법에는 가리어를 배운 가리 처법에는 가리어를 스타트 처법들이로 왔다 이제 한번 다들 연애 담바 투지제는 지스타 제가 군주 숨나 처법표와 이나 아니 가리어에서나 아니 컨트롤 연애 담바 신 담바를 군주 숨부디 신 담바를 가르스나 컨트롤 처법표와 때네 아니 랑기 동에서 왔다 대와 토바다 데데기 내서 교비와 인자 컨트롤 신 담바라 그래 연애 담바를 그래 제가 연애 담바 신 담바스를 딱걸로 손남표와 때네 랑기 아니 되는 탐지 두바다 미드바 탐지 세베기 자제 여백이 내인자 걸어 신 담바 오피스 되게 되라 아니 신 담바를 표기 있어 어디서 뭐래서
when offerings are made to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas as the object and the personage to whom we make the offerings, what benefit will ensue from that? Well, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are the field of all good qualities, the field of all merit. They are known as this, the field of good qualities, the field of merit. And they are called this, because when one makes offerings to this supreme field of merit, supreme field of good qualities, all one's discontents are dispelled and all one's satisfactions are brought about. All one's contentment is brought about. And so we call these personages, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas together, the merit field, the field of all good qualities, because offerings made to these bring satisfaction and dispel our discontents.
아니 제짱과 미상이 계제 여마라고 군조로 제짱어지다 마상어다 아니 직근데 개여마 군조로 세르피와다 메도프와다 도피와다 개발 개여마 군조로 이나양 수수라 랑라 소남사베지도 랑디 소남사베치도 아니 저버도 표구 열었어 그거 표구 열었어 제가 대대 인도 아니 다 세들 다 수수 딱모스민 다 스미오로 이나다 수수 지구 많이 봐 아니 다 수수다 저와요 봤음지 아니 랑다다 심지 탐지 라스 아니 가지고 다고마서 쳐바디 아니 가지고 소놈사베 치돌라 아니 저랑 쳐바디 새로 나왔어 아니 슈거 비고요 레송스
Sublime recipients, compassionate lords, oh, think of me with love, accept these gifts of mine. The final two lines of verse 6. The offering is made to the merit field, the field of all good qualities. And the request is made that the merit field receive these offerings. Think of me with love, accept these gifts of mine. Accept them, and they will be accepted for the field of merit, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Do not distinguish between that which is a personal possession and that which is had in common. They don't distinguish between pure and impure. To them, there's no difference between the flower and that which is gold and that which is made of stone. These value are for us, measures for us as we strive to accumulate merit and do so through making offerings. It is constructive for us as part of our offering practice, but to them it makes no difference. And so then we say, oh, think of me with love, accept these gifts of mine. We say here, oh, think of me with love, but the expression embraces others too. The offerings are made on behalf of those with connections to us and all sentient beings, for it is part of our practice of accumulating merit. And so we ask that these offerings are accepted as part of our practice of accumulating merit.
Sungu yores tabu peda susula pena rangla ze yoba de pyuba tang ona sina rangla ze yoba de pyugu ina pyuba dile ani bage rangla ta ze sambu yena da khari yena dige pyuba dile ani yiji kun chuba pyuba di ani ze ma pyuba rang yiji kun chuba khari sine pyugu de ese odi toya da zawe sigdi odi di wode dwa dan sonam me de tinjin de 최근 너신 달라 치마시 되나 신경 공부 군기디 다기 된래 얘기 투시 어디 측시들이야 어디 측시들이 다 간다 얘기 주변에 저거 표고야 아니 그러나 너를 여발에 얘기 거는 저거 표고야 준세시게 어려서
Verse 7, the verse that follows, describes the purpose of making a merit, the purpose of making an offering of that which is commonly had rather than a personal possession, despite having personal possessions. Why give these, or rather, why make mentally visualized offerings when one has something to give, a material to give, a substance to give? Now, if one does have wealth, then one ought to make ought to make an offering, an actual material offering. But here we find in this verse the reason why mental offerings are the most constructive of all. For destitute of merit, I am very poor. I have no other wealth. And so, protectors, you whose wise intentions are for others' good, in your great power, receive them for my sake.
That's it. Hamudi Dani, Sonum meeting, Jinjin, Sonum the Medimba, Danga, and it has a Dani, so that's Suzu Chechuapi, Suzu Suina, that's Dani is it. That's Sonum meeting, the Sonum Medimba the Parasana, and it does rang its Semomata. The Talan to the moon, Mizitina, the Dimo, Jawama Karina Yang, and Punjola Chevapi. Kunjo never check and Chava Pu Matuba, the Sanjana Chibata Matuenza, take a sonum the Medibares, you Masawa, you sonum Masawenza, and go sonum the Medibares, and means that's a deal at Jebu, and sonum the Jebu, Kunjo never say Jebu, nor long to Hazang Timos to Pomba to make back. Then Norji Pomba, Kunjo Chava Pia, Zeg Pombas, or this year, Sedan. You rangi Saravama Namsula, and Sonam Sagi, Kunjola Chava, Sanjela Jibata, Chungmidu, the Chungmeva Tene, Talena, Sonam Kunjo never chill, Sonam Chimbutingala, Midus, or Chitamudi, this was.
For destitute of merit, I am very poor. I have no other wealth. Destitute of merit. Here, the individual making the offering refers to himself or herself. I am very poor, and I am very poor as a result of during past lives, rather than making offerings to the three jewels, rather than practicing generosity towards sentient beings, I have not, and as a result, now, at present, I have insufficient merit. I have so little merit that I don't have more to offer. The cause for having plenty to offer, I did not accumulate in past lives. I am insufficient. My merit is insufficient for that. I am destitute and wanting for material to give. For in past lives, I did not make offerings to the three gems. I did not practice generosity towards sentient beings. So that which would be the material I could use to bring satisfaction and delight to the sacred, I don't have.
Ani kunjo nyebar chebe chebe shen dalan chiya machi chi khan yo mares ta ti meba tenas gyunje didik china ani shendyo gombe sidu ta sanje da chanju semba nam khare rangi tuen chine ta bang de shengi tuen khona chebe ges ani be ta goyen sidu zamba kyo miye ten sanje ta chanju semba nam ges ani da gi tuen le ta nga Talingala, any pay Sonam Sayata, any chick Kunjo, Chova Pia, Sonam Saya, Chitula, Kunjo, Chova Pi, Chitula, and a Kerang, Gagita, Tering, and a Tabumaso, Chovati, Sheronans, the two shares, the two Siddhamata, Yala, Meveto, Pugu, thing is Pugu, and a Mashi Yagi Yan, and Kenzi Newsum, that thing is in bed. Kimbe, did say it. 아니 뉴베이 데스 여러 오 데리지고는 초바디 쉐로 나왔으네. 오 디 간다 초바디 간다 군조기 간다 말 초바 비에 데리지고는 매대 이나야 아니 왜투 제베고는 쉐로 나왔으네. 쉬워져 버려서.
So as I am wanting of that which would be material for an offering to delight the Buddhas, as I am wanting in this, as I am insufficient in merit, consider me, and I will make an offering. For destitute of merit, I am very poor, I have no other wealth, and so, protectors, you whose wise intentions are for others' good, in your great power, receive them for my sake. You whose wise intentions are for others' good. You are the sacred, you are the precious, the three gems, and you have the means for receiving these offerings of mine, and they are received by you on behalf of all sentient beings, and they are ultimately given by me in order that I may make my activities for the benefit of others. And so you are the protectors and the guardians, and you have the wisdom, the love, and the power to partake of these offerings, of that which is merely visualized, and of that which is merely that which is had in common, but partake of these and do so with love is the request made here.
Oh, the Chetan, that the Chiba and the Chiba Pia, that Kandar, around the Penang, Seven, that Suzu, they Yoba, Penang around the Chiba Pita, Suzuki, but Suzu around Yubek, they do Punjolo, Puba Inayang, Career, Sonam, the Tabumasu, Zena, Sonam Tokumaris, Katakan Latas in Bus, Chetan Karis and Azus, Yubek. 나는 수술을 예배 제디 아니 딜라 체요 체 매바데 말에 체요 딜라양 아니 랑기 거기다 예 표기요 예 지기요 선배게 아니 지 간단 얘기 작배기 현자광도 줘야다 어 된대게 돈에 다 제단 된대 이디 제 여바 있나양 나한테 제 매세디 아니 다 받아 수술을 제 여바지 매 나한테 말했어 근데 군조 처벌 군조를 녀버지 제주 국어로 뒤차기요 말했어. 군조를 녀버지 제생되는 그 체매 봐. 다 장시 이동와. 다저 아니 또 군조생이 아니 가르스나 거기 심지기 되는 심지기 펜버 바식이 이들 아니 심지는 펜버 제외 레기 처벌 누구도나 아니 처벌 차기로 와서는 뒤들 아니 랑의 유비 제디 표가 있나요? 아니 최백이 제 다다데 다고마수 제표가 나시지 누가 전부 자기 매와도 어디를 해서 오지 아무나 차
Now we're making an offering through mental visualization of that which is had in common rather than a personal possession. To compare this with making an offering of something, of a personal possession, compare the two, and it will be a comparison between that which has a measure, that which is finite, and that which, when made as an offering of an actual material, an actual substance, causes one to refer to themselves, to take credit personally, to say, I offered this, I did that, and to mix with the offering self-love to such a degree that the offering, which is by design meant to delight the Buddhas, will not delight the Buddhas, will not have the same effect. For the Buddhas, that which actually pleases the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas is that which is clean and pure and beneficial to sentient beings. Any activity that is actually beneficial to sentient beings counts as an offering, but an offering that is made of a personal possession that only increases one's acquisitiveness and desirous attachment and vanity is not an offering. So compare the two, and one will find that offering that which is had in common and done visually is most meritorious.
By Tamado, Yachiba, the Tawija, Tiricina, never your seven Suzuka, that they yoga the Pu Dilla, Puyo Dilla. Puya that they say Puinata, Mendo Puinata, and it said Mukari Puyu in a Pua di Kulungu Tobi, and the back on that bed, Mango Tingity, Merbeto on the bed. Mango Twin Putu about his own. 만도야 제 수수 제요 배 잡아진 시우도 아니 아직 다고마서 치료 이게 제 필요 있는데 권한태한테 말해서 간다 수수 제요 필요가 있나요? 필요디 아니 간다르하게 수수 셈불로 다는 쌍마지 필요가 찍지 아니 대양 땡이 또 집에 유유만이 봐 망보 나가 강화다 자가 야마도 앞에 야첨부 어디에 여발 파면 땡이 돈은 면 필요해나 아니 손은 탑에 요래 손은.
But don't misunderstand this to mean that one should keep every personal possession and make no actual material offering to the sacred. Offer what you have, what you can, whether it is precious material such as gold or a flower or whatever it might be, but that may be the basis too for an intention that is intensified through samadhi and visualization, sufficient to multiply that finite thing into something that fills the sky, an offering that is immeasurable and fills space itself. When one is able to do this without any possessiveness, that is the most constructive and meritorious offering. But when one is possessive and keeps that which is an actual personal possession and keeps it, misunderstanding the lesson here, that would be a misunderstanding. One should make an offering of that which one has, but should do so in such a way that you actually part with it, separate yourself from it, and multiply it by the force of samadhi, such that it fills the sky and is immeasurable.
Diambe ju chimbo pe nga mo rang la pe kandar se ju chimbo go wa na shi an kunjo la ju chimbo go ra wo de na shi ani pe ju chimbo pe ro de kandar ro ya de be be se da ju de ni ba yo ba ani diambe chu ju mai ba chimbo yo ba wo de la me ba chen ani ding jing dong de che ba bi de ne pu yo wa che da de na shi an su su ze khari pu yo na yo ba de pe de
And this very sort of visualization with this very sort of intention is practiced in the secret Mantrayana, wherein flesh and blood, a finite amount is through the force of samadhi visualized as growing into a very heap of nourishing and nutritious, endowed with 100 flavors, an offering of that which is sustenance to the sacred, the precious sacred three jewels. This form of offering is made through the power of samadhi. And so one may take any basis, any material, and multiply and transform it through the power of samadhi.
이내 코베 오마 아웅스 친질라 땡에 나도 땡에 자제 친질라가 아니 배 잡을는 집에 자수 첨부들을 채워는데 뭐냐 아니 배 사실다 강가 친질라 두야다 배 되게다 땡에 지글게 될 이제 나주 표를 되는 땡에 지글게야다 땡에 지글게는 심지에 탈치 봐 영향을 보라 제주 자산 강가 도시 친지지만도 여말도 땡에 되는 아 친질라가 아니 배 첨부 표를 되게 손함 톱 손놈 돈을 하는 게 땡이지 깨는 베스트 시 다르지 뭐 영화에서 봐. 제단 나던데 배고 대신 표고 여러 와서는 거기 대신 따고 대대 표해야 되니 시라고 손놈 채워 줘 봤는데 빼도 여러 손.
There is also the inner offering, and the inner offering is similarly the actual basis, the material for the offering is very small, but through the recitation of Om Ahum and the blessing that those bring, and through the force of samadhi, mudra, and mantra, that small inner offering is multiplied so that it is vaster and deeper than any ocean. It is this offering made in this way that is designed to give rise to samadhi in the mind, consummate samadhi in the mind, and through the arising of true samadhi in the mind, the well-being of sentient beings may be completely fulfilled. And so here there is just the smallest basis, actual material basis for the offering, but the force of samadhi and mudra and mantra multiplies it so that the merit for the arising of true samadhi is accumulated so that the well-being of sentient beings may be achieved. This is all brought to pass by the force of mudra, mantra, and samadhi. And this practice accumulates great merit. Now, those of you who are practicing the secret mantrayana, in the secret mantrayana, the lower tantras, will take instead the highest tantras. In the highest tantras, it is the mind that is preeminent. It is the mind rather than any physical substance that is the priority, as over and over again in the ritual and in the sadhana, one is said to meditate upon, to visualize, to give rise to realize. And these are the instructions time and again. Think this, achieve this, accomplish this, and it is all meant to be done mentally, not based on any substance. And so it is that mental activity of this sort and the blessings that one may supplicate the sacred for bring about purification, realization, and the ignition of wisdom. And this is all brought about by the power of the mind, and equal to the power of the mind then is the merit that one accomplishes, and ultimately one achieves bodhicitta in this way. And with the achievement or the arising of bodhicitta, then one is able to bring about and see to the well-being of sentient beings. This is brought about through mental activity, through the power of samadhi, and this is shown in those sadhanas.
Oh yeah, that in subject sumber rangi lu that lu susu that round susu wangja yu susu chasan kharchi tuna chitu yu rangi lu and priya that subject the race that did test mango to zo de shan ngazo komani de choba priya de jigyang khan to wado sa the masa de mango yu get something to do. And dealing with the pure tendency, there's Kase with the Sotona or something to do. Any loop we had it to the German and the Shech of his one.
The next section presents an offering of the body, one's own body. And one's own body is that which one has autonomously, or rather one actually has control over one's body, and so it may be made as an offering. But we will stop here. We will conclude the class here because time is running out. Now we've covered the way in which offerings are made, but there are likely some doubts regarding this, and so if we take this time that we use for question and answer to clarify those doubts, I think that would be constructive, and we will resume next week with the verses describing making an offering of one's own body. So how are you responding to these verses describing making an offering of that which is had in common, substances had in common?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the teaching. Question regard to through samadhi. If I understand correctly, this is one of the highest state in meditation. And meditator uses a process or technique to get to, please correct me, the technique or process to get to samadhi. Once he or she gets to samadhi, in order to make offering, he or she has to change the process of the technique in order to make offering. If he or she does that, then he or she is no longer in that process, the meditation process or techniques. Would that break the samadhi state? Out of that state
Oh, I see.
when he or she makes that offering?
I see. Oh, yeah. 아니 팅은 토빌라 아니 규렘 여러와 아니 규렘 아니 데라 소소기 렘바카시 장네 라 아니 팅은 토비여레 팅은 토비여레 팅은 톱네 아니 팅은 기 왕기 아니 메베체네 다 아니 쪼베 제디 아니 게르탄 당겨와 얘네들 이제 나랑이 상담단 디 노리언스를 얘네 디 아니 띵은 토비기 규름데라 아니 소소기 아니 탑랑 믹서기 탑랑 때네 아니 띵은 토비 요르마도 아니 강진진 아니 토비 요마레 이제 띵은 톱네 아니 소소기 머바 체야 기 캥기 띵은 디 아니 라 드로이기 닝가 만두게 그렇죠? 어디래 디소스기 아니 띵은 기 떡기 아니 추베 제디 아니 야키아 게르탄이요레 에네안디 갸 아니 게 가리사 아니 머베체베 킹기 아니 띵은 기 시네 야미 띵은 기 모오디 아니 라 아니 그로용 그로서레 삼기
있잖아. 스스로 some 방만 너를 말했어. 내가 여러 팀믹 제발 가가를 여러 사서 띵이지 더 세장도 조금스 미국 찍으라 삼로 땅 전에 아니 띵이지 두산에 루시장도 샘신장 토그로 와top 사도 잡아 아니 띵이지인데 누버처 제처 담아 어서 제처 담도 곧 띵이지 갈라고 제공 띵이지 사서 제공 띵이지 세디 아니 샘디 띵이지 이마라 그 미국도 제외 잡선 춘주 전부 춘주 두두가가 제 장고에서 그 띵이지 제 장에 망고 열었어 지난 것도 도와서 띵이지 당부터도 띵이지 샘 많이 오지 찍을 되고 와 띵이지 그러지 톱산에 아니 띵이지 제 장고에서 제 장에 샘디 말아지 뭐 띵이지랑 할때 아니 미국도 제고만 오점 춘주도 춘보로 파 춘보도 춘주도 쭉 되지 되게 강한 제 띵이지 제 장에 근데 답시 망고 열어서 니 지나 뭐가 시신이 누가도 연구를 해서
So the doubt that you give right that you raise the uncertainty regarding this process is credible. I mean, it's what you're thinking makes sense because as you begin training in samadhi, you begin that process with a placement meditation. Placement being the beginning training in samadhi. You place the mind and hold the mind on an object, and and this is the beginning the beginning practice in samadhi, and eventually through this training one achieves pliancy of physical pliancy and mental pliancy. as a result of achieving a level of samadhi. With that achievement, through placement meditation, with that achievement of samadhi, one then begins to exercise their skill in samadhi. And this is done through samadhi of analysis, through which the essence or the basis, the continuity of the samadhi is maintained, while the mind too engages in a manipulation of that continuity to make impressions, for instance, the impression of that which is small into an impression of that which is big into that which is small, mental exercises as exercises in samadhi. Now one begins first with the placement meditation in order to achieve the first level of samadhi, and then one refines one's skill in samadhi, the continuity of the essence of the samadhi remaining, while an exercise occurring in increasing and decreasing, multiplying and emanating takes place. And this will be described in greater detail in the chapter on vigilance.
아니 유대는 시에 땡이들 지시기래 아니 말라메 땡이들 다 어제도 말라메 땡이들 도단데도 양 테스트입니다 요래서 어서 단단 가서 거기 단단 가서게 매버체는 다들 땡이지 뭐 토비하게 땡이지 토비하게 주기치도라 매베게 토네 아니 저거 그야다 거기 셈 수수고 셈 나도 상로마고 땅 제디 제마 땡이지 제 친구 요하게 누버자야 주식도 자기 어디서
Now there is a unique kind of training in samadhi presented through the secret mantrayana. The presentations of samadhi differ in some respects between the samadhi of the lower schools, the foundation vehicle, which derives its explanation of samadhi from the Abhidhamma Kosha. This differs to some degree from the samadhi as it is found described in the sutras. And these both differ from the samadhi as it is understood and practiced in the secret mantrayana. Now, here in the secret mantrayana practices, an abundance of visualizations are the cause for, are in a development of the cause for achieving a level of samadhi that is very skillful at visualization and all the meditation of an adept individual samadhi. So here we have in all the visualizations cause for, or what will become cause for, achievement of a samadhi that is very skilled.
지난 토모에 땡이진 게요. 하고 배나 나도 이거 답변을 치료가 세워. 뭐디 보고나도 있나? 가리시를 땡이진 고매디 콘주고 타르바토가 이래 일을. 콘주고 타르바스도 소매기 가면 깨서나. 어서 지엠 시지여와. 시지를 깨서나 타르바토가. 어서 그 답을 수습해 지야 매버 일하지 지야면 일하지 다들라 오 대랑 셈이 여하고 그 셈대 매버다 지야 매버 두지 매매버다 데이터도 모두 타르바토고 지도로 왔다 콘솔에 신에도 땡에서 도고 왔다 다 단단 가지고 땡에지 도배디 장주 셈단 거기 동미도 싫어서 세 장야 치도라 아니 땡에지 두배 와 어디서 땡에지 두다데 땡이지 뭐 찍을 해대 이나야 땡이지 제 치료당 아니 미 가가 돈이야 그 땡이지 네버치 좀 그래 처벌 마음이 열어서
Now there is the common samadhi and the uncommon samadhi. The samadhi of the Tirthikas, the outsiders, the non-Buddhist extremists, take samadhi to be the cause for liberation. It is the cause for liberation as samadhi moves through various levels of samadhi to the point of the peak of existence, achieving the peak of existence in the formless realm, and with that, liberation is achieved. According to the Tirthika, the non-Buddhist extremist, the process is that all is mind is recognized, that mind too does not exist, that there is an absence of discrimination. With the cessation of discrimination, the cessation of mind, one achieves the peak of existence, and this is the process and activity of samadhi according to the non-Buddhists, and this is samadhi. However, the samadhi of the Buddhists, particularly the samadhi here we are concerned with, is a samadhi that is samadhi skilled in the exercise of the wisdom realizing emptiness and the mind of enlightenment. So the samadhi is the training in skillfulness in wisdom realizing emptiness and bodhicitta. So they are, across these two traditions, samadhi, but the skill of the samadhi, the exercise of the samadhi, differs in its objective, and it differs in the kind of activity that it entails. Okay, you guys are in queue.
Okay, mine is very quick. Thank you so much, Geshe-la. So when we are awake, we make mental offerings and we gain merit. But when we are asleep, in our dream, if we see that we make offerings to the three jewels, do we accumulate merits as well?
Also, eine gerade nisebe negab de la also eine chopapu yora eine da nikupe negab de la ni also die susu milam la susu eine chopapu eine kunjosum la chopapu eine boa de eine tona tonge duna eine dela eine sonam saire
지금 마지니 고수가 숨어와 이대로 이내 코란 빼 냠내는 니라마 저거에 니라마 두 돈이 거에 니라로 공부를 차세니 차는 내가 선 니라만 냠내서 니라만 나게 칠로 지저발라 밑에자 또 두시 숨어서 왜 두제 휴지로 어디든지 마도 연마도 차선 니라만 찍고 그래서追주고 따고 냠내 키라나
you accumulate merit. This is the very practice of the Bodhisattva Shantideva, the heir to the Buddha Shantideva. This is his form of practice. He seemed to others to be asleep, to be nothing but a layabout, but as he slept in his dreams he was making offerings and he meditated on emptiness and he did prostrations. All of this he did during sleep while he was dreaming, and to those who observed him, he seemed to be nothing but a layabout, someone who just defecated, ate, and slept. But this was his practice, and you're on your mind. It's the very practice of the Bodhisattva.
Thank you, Geshe-la. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about if there's a difference in the purposes of the outer offering versus the inner offering.
Also, the chigi jobadam nangi jobadi ani miyu gikepar gigangla chik sungi yube.
치 쳐봐대 난게 쳐봐 자야 당고 치 쳐봐가 자지만 그에 때와 난게 쳐봐도 장으로 왔어. 그에 저도 난게 쳐봐들 해서 난게 쳐봐대. 난게 쳐봐대 아니 쳐봐대. 제마세 친구찬 자야 이리 당고 치 쳐봐라. 그 저와체 장 아니 양념처럼 난게 쳐봐야 돼. 충분히 그래서 이제 그거지.
One trains in the outer offering to develop the skill for the inner offering. So one's main offering will become the inner offering, but to develop the skill for this, one trains in the outer offerings. As one develops skill and familiarity in the external or outer offering, one has developed skill for the main practice, the inner offering. For the first development of realization, one relies upon the external offerings, but with the first realization, one further increases realization through training in the inner offering. With the achievement of samadhi, one may focus one's energies on inner offerings. With the achievement of skilled samadhi, one's focus may be inner offering. In your generation and completion stage practices, you will perform the inner offering through samadhi. And you will do these in your generation and completion stage practice. Are there any others? Thank you.
Can Yeshua tell us again why mental offering generates more merits than the actual offering? That's not considered the visualization of the samadhi or mudra, but just the fact that mental offering generates more merit than the actual offering.
Logi wangi maybe wangi lamna maride logi zogyo logi langne ani choba puyedi logi langne choba puyedi ani ngosu puyele ani karse peyan chewa sonam chewa sagi di ani sasi ani chirchi narchi kainsen di ani tingizen da nga tingizen basapdenso parsha ani logi langne ani choba puyedi ani ngosu puyele sonam chewa top gogi gyumsen di yangyarchi sochini
장주 톱을 쳐봐라 장주샘 넣고라 장주샘 귤에 깨고 장주샘 귤에 깨버 쳐봐라 장주샘 귤에 깨지 소남 소대사 그래서 이 귤에 지리서 오야 다 소남 귤에 밖에 장주샘다 귤에 되게 깨게 누가 치고 소남 장주샘 귤에 깨버 쳐봐라 소남 소 야천부 고고로 와 야천부 고고 이거인데 만화도 단다게 수술을 예배 제일 표니 먼저 장주쌤 왜 두야다 되게 제일 누가를 거투야 시작하고요 그래서 그래서 딜레 다고 마소에 제일 필요해이나 아니 디 땡이진들 당고 땡이진 아주 마주 보는 땡이도 여마 땡이진 매나양 나 도는 질럽게 요래 수수그 쌤이 매버진 망복표디 쌤이 도는 단단 아주 땡이진 매디 땡이진 두개게 유튜브로 와 유튜브에 그다음 쌤나 삼로다 매버진 쌤이 도는 찍디 줄을 줄이 야를 야든 동도 되게 봐하고 줄 쌤나 망복파 삼로다 아니 되게 쳐봐 필요해이나 디 쳐봐 필요해 되게 아니 쳐봐 동도 몸을 들어서 당고 체 예배 쳐봐 아니 로티스 검소나 아니 체 매배 쳐봐 어서 그 잡는 네티 강장 배 쳐배 제를 삼는 필요해요 아니 디나지 장가지 아무 두가 뭐 필요해요 어딘데 뭐 요래서 아니 사이 디 차트에 변화가 이 배디기 시기로 단단마시에 단단 배디시 배디지만 차트에 변화가 시에 있어 어서 나도 차트도 잠깐 추가비도 간다 간다 배 장가만 삼배 장가지 아무 두였다 야침부터 미국 제대 찍고 요랬어. 그래서 차트 가도록 자와 요러와 안 자와도 다는 데 시야 오소.
아니 거기 티와 기대와 가르데스는데 아니 띵이zen 파르샤 아니 나데 데와디 파르샤 아니 그래서 아니 차게 텐수디 양 파르샤 디 로기 랑웨
제가 쌤은 몇 번째라서.
생기 몇번째니 생기
삼당고.
삼당어디
삼근데 삼당 삼도 아주 그나 자제들이 좀 더 주의 망고 주의 저 삼년당 몇백이다. 삼로 땅에 또 망고 이거. 때 미국 지난주 다 지난 또 쌤도 배 수수 쌤도 망고다. 야친 뭐 이거 봐. 때 삼로 땅도 다 당보다 영 갖고 열어 와. 이내 직제 이지는 공주. 어디든지 이제는 당보다 제가 맞아는 뭐 마음은 때 영어 갖고 와. 이내 공부 고매를 땡기지 봐. 직주 이주 숨주 주지마 직제 이제 숨제는 아니 뭐 쌤나 망고 이거 소비로 봐.
The purpose of offerings is to achieve Buddhahood, and in order to achieve Buddhahood, one must give rise to bodhicitta, and in order to give rise to bodhicitta, one must have sufficient merit for this. And so this is a relationship of cause and effect here. And for the arising of bodhicitta, there must be considerable merit, and to the end of accumulating merit, one engages in these offerings. Now, it is such an extraordinary objective requiring such great merit that if one were to rely on the finitude of what one has in material possessions, it's hard to comprehend that being sufficient for the merit required to generate bodhicitta. So then the reliance upon commonly had substances, resources, commonly had. And yes, samadhi and mudra and mantra increase the efficacy and force of the mental inclination, but there is a period where we incline the mind in the making of offerings of common resources, and one does that through thought in order to increase and multiply that which is given. One imagines one becoming 10, 100, 100, 1,000, and in this way, the offering is made myriad and immeasurable, 1,000 to 100,000, and one gradually becomes familiar with, accustomed to making immeasurable what is otherwise finite. And this same process is described in the root verses of the Bodhicharyavatara, like in another context, in the context of making prostrations, where just as when we make offerings and the aspect of multiplying the benefits of offerings, multiplying the offerings, one similarly multiplies the prostrations one makes, part of the same process. It is a difficult practice until one has become accustomed to it. It is difficult to imagine, to conceive of the very vast and the myriad and the immeasurable, but through practice at making 1, 2, and 2, 3, and doing this for one day, then two, then many, through that practice, one will gain a feeling for what it entails.
그래서 사실 당황해서 러브에 고수도 수수고 직직이 숨치는 라든 제만 러브 텐도도 아니 배치 동라마고 몸마고 너 때를 샤투야 지치도다 제단 먼저 담보 디스 마음도 디스 이만 직진이 지다 직지 공부도 아니 그 데칼에 하고 말았어. 그래서 지난 띵이지 두게 대시 데칼에 하고 말해. 띵이지 수수기 배 약보치는 주주 정보치는 고바이는 나와 두나 띵이지 빌레 기기です. 그래서 나요. 제가 근데 이제 수수기 공부 때마다 그때 개발을 했어. 그래서 공부 때마다 어디서 쌤부터는 명언도 방법 그래야 제대로 남산 이만 살증이 있잖아. 그걸 쉐어를 해서.
Take, for example, the going to school and how at the beginning one knows so little, but by the time they graduate, where they had only known a few words or a few concepts to begin in the beginning of their schooling, at the end, with graduation, they have thousands of words, thousands of ideas that they can work with. In the same way, initially it is very difficult, but with time, through growing familiar with the process, so samadhi will be achieved. One may achieve samadhi, especially when they have the basis of a stable meditation. It is said that within 6 months of earnest training, one may achieve samadhi. It says this is said in the scriptures. And so it's just a factor, or rather it is just a matter of whether one has grown familiar with the skill of practicing in samadhi. And one gains their familiarity through these mental visualizations, such that eventually one achieves samadhi.
할렐루야. 텐션 받았다. 예. 나는지 영다. 야야. 이거는 까먹 해지 되다다.
Allez,
야예. 친구라 마셔. 그래시나. 예.
Yeah, no, I'll actually ask another time.
Yeah. 야예 되니다. 이제 지난다 띵이 계세야라고다. 아니 찍보게 돈이 또 be셔럽 계세야지 띠스 내가 지그랬어. 장주심 계세죠. 띠스 갈라하고 야레스. 장주심 계와라 선제 탐제를 이동을 참아 계고래. 이동을 참아 계고 동네에 때도 인지 계고로 어디서 곧 그만 쉬우지 제일 계고도 장주심 계게 생데 데스하고 장주심 지글에 계산은 아니 인데 셔바가 계래라고 강가배 장무고 계용이 내 차를 해서
Now, the achievement of samadhi, the achievement of the wisdom realizing emptiness, these are easy by comparison to the arising of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is much more difficult. Bodhicitta entails the compassionate mind that earnestly wishes sentient beings to be parted from their suffering. And from that, a love for sentient beings too is present before bodhicitta ever arises. And so generating bodhicitta is much more difficult. But once one has generated bodhicitta, in a way, no more training is required. All good qualities and all skill will follow from that.
장주심 빌레게 원래 방법 수수도 자디 수수도 많이 뭐 시험을 자디 많이 뭐 마시 몰라 장주심 계사 거야 말해서.
Now, for the arising of bodhicitta, one must first recognize in one's enemy their very mother. And with that, one may give rise to bodhicitta.
당연히 다도이 뭐 배랑나 가진 친구이 뭐 마삼나 참바기 말 참바마지는 아니 장주심 계야 말해서.
Without that, without recognizing in one's adversary their closest and most meaningful relation, there is no arising of love, and without love there will be no bodhicitta.
냠내니래다 냠내수들은 랑이 규타바체 규타소나 아니 그 장주 생이 된체하게 저 로존하게 장주선 장고야 되다 무지 장주선 장야들의 리케야 된다라 좋아 아니 단 저게 양라도 장고야도 레세다 디치들라 다 손놈 친구 싸고 여러 손놈 친구 싸게 된다는 아니 최고야 차세야 다디 쳔베지는 디바샤야 다디 주가가 메도 마루와 데데 마중아이나 아니 간다 랑이 규디 다그 말에 랑이 규디 마타 사마메나 아니 주선 계도 마로 데데 잘 코도 규데 저와도 데스 다 수수게 이만이만은 냠네 치토야 아니 쳐봐도 수수게 쇼게 니마를 해나면서 수수게 냠네 나면 제대 피토나 아니 샤다실로 조사들 장 차도 왔어 아니 장주섬 더에 규차거든요. 장주섬 길 끼었잖아. 아니 왜 내가 톱사 찍어래 손지.
For the production of bodhicitta, for the birth of bodhicitta in the mind, merit is required, and we make offerings and practice in order to purify the mind, so that bodhicitta may arise there. And so there are really two parts of a practice. They are, the first is the actual training in bringing about the well-being of all sentient beings as the very heart of one's practice, that one is competent to achieve with the arising of bodhicitta. But in order to give rise to bodhicitta in the first case, this other kind of practice is required for the accumulation of merit. It is the training in all of the branches for the purpose of accumulating merit, all the branches of making offerings and prostrations and confession, and all of these branches of practice that are indispensable for the purpose of generating the merit required for producing bodhicitta. Without purifying the mind through these branch practices, bodhicitta cannot be produced in the mind. So one must each day, every morning, engage in these branch practices. And as one does so, as their practice, one will be purifying the mind and accumulating the merit, so that one day bodhicitta does arise. And with that, the rising of bodhicitta, all good qualities have been accomplished.
뭐도지 근데 다 근데 이도 샘생이디 샘기 장신 카레스나 당와 배짱마 상냐 녀고 마고바 샘기 장신 샘기 연대 카레스나 가수 곰네야 곰매요 곰니 연대 가수 배 야침부 차요 어디 샘기 연대를 세다가 샘고 곰나 가리네 곰투를 장투를 제투를 했어 어제서 거기 연대도 들었어 당신 당 배다 짱마 상냐 배 시고 배 출을 좀 짱마 소시하는 당마 다냐지 어슴그라 이들이 저를 세단 딱 곰마고 개발을 겁나 아니 가리네 딱 용야 여발을 쌤 연대를 해서 근데 너는 누구예요?
So the nature of the mind, the very nature of the mind is luminosity, is purity and lucidity, luminousness. It has no stains. It is essentially pure and stainless. And the quality that the mind has is that it may become familiar and recognize, or rather may become familiar with any phenomena. So it can come to an ability to do anything. It may become familiar with anything. It may become accustomed to anything. Its essence is pure luminosity, as a clean mirror, as a clean mirror is. So the mind is, and it may be familiarized with anything. The only difference in one's experience is whether one is experienced, or rather familiar with a given thing, or one is not. And with that, then we will conclude the class with our closing prayers.
도대체 나가서 전주 말한도 최 년부터 시에부터 내가 가르쳐 있나요? 장주선 기회 줄어줘 shows 아니 텔레테는 대 심지기 수수로 상대 자판 두바 아니 직신 동에서 줄어 the draw shows money of the
And so with that, as we've instructed and listened to the Dharma about bodhicitta, and so that this virtuous practice of listening may be the cause for the arising of bodhicitta, and with the arising of bodhicitta, that every sentient being's every last desire be achieved, and that their every discontent be dispelled. To that end, we dedicate ourselves in our closing prayers. Page 14.
Teneredo bele soni padar yamba kashi saba lome mare ke lo do wano nare jave ombo na gyuji tema sube zera kundo yang jambe yangi zewe jesu Tebe remba kuzan lamji jo nene drube jena nije Rangi jijin lobe lamji ni shuda tsewe trabe tangi Doe yije mamba sije ne Jave temba yunzen zikyuji Temba rinjin choje majaba Chabja nyamba gyube chobe Nije jembe yira dewa jo pende teje sewa jeba Seje yame mejo tele le jup chanju lamje bembe Tadu namje ila bebe se jawe zeba ringu kyonggyuji Lamsa drube tunje druje je gege seje meda mene Sera kundu jave namba yi namba namba dewa manjuji Kanse teba jola chuje suje jola zomba de Tode naje tabo choje Jaje jazu chugu jajuji
From my two collections, rest and space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds lead to mine, by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives. May I find the rest of the complete teaching, and may I please all the Buddhas by practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path which I have discerned. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined. May I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive to practicing the excellent path never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones. May oceans of prosperity surface.
Dāngi jīnyī sāmbē yewa dī dēnān rūwa mūlā rāmi Kēvara jīzū lōsā rāwa yī dēmbē yīmbū rīmbū sīrī shō Kārī rāwē kōwē jīngāngi bēnā dēwā ālū rūwē Jere sewa tenzin jazo yi shabe side baru tengyuruji Jambe bawo jedar kemba kulu sambo teya deyin Tera kunji jesu talo je jewa deda kamje rabu Yuzo shebe jawa kamse je, mowa kama chodo mawa. Kaje gewe zawa digo jang, zambo jeje rado mowa je. Chanjo senjo ringo che, maje kwana je kyochi. Kewa nyamba memba yang, kone kone, kewa isho.
I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Bodhisattva, the shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful, and infinite. Please remain until psychic existence is ended. Just as the brave Rajrishi and Samantabhadra realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate these roots of virtue, with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious thus gone one to 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more.
취배 주다 기나는 것도 추박이 내가 무시고 추박 해야 돌아는 삼로 봄이하고 결혼하고 생일 추박하고 풀어나는 소.
So this week we have talked at great length about offerings, and so in the week to come, focus yourselves on meditating upon these offerings and make many offerings.
That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, every last one of you. That's all I am, a parent. It's perfect.